an email, 8 to 10 minutes to basically, if you'd like to do a 30-second or a minute intro. And I think everybody knows you, but some people, there's always new people following us, and that's what we all want, new readers. And then we'll just go from there. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of a discussion. Not long. We'll try to keep this to about an hour and 15 minutes. I know we all have things to do, and I think that we also have, and folks also, get sometimes tired after an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, let me see if anybody's on that I need to move over. Yeah. Okay, give me about 40 seconds or so.
Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session. It's our 9th session of the conference from the Luso-American Education Foundation, a conference that began 45 years ago in the city of San Diego, of all places, a beautiful place to have a conference, even 45 years ago. The conference began as a product of the bilingual education. So in 1977, there were quite a few bilingual education teachers of the Portuguese language, especially aides and folks in support staff, because at that particular time we still had strong immigration coming from the Azores, or had just arrived a few years earlier than that. And so people like myself, who came over at 10, I came over a little bit before that, but folks who came in the late 60s and early 70s and went to school surely needed the bilingual education support. And so that's how the conference began. And a few years later, of course, bilingual education in the 1980s took a turn. It became something that wasn't politically well received at the particular time. And so in the late 1980s, the conference took a turn itself to more of a language and cultural conference, and trying to continue the debates and the discussions and the celebration of the Portuguese legacy in California. We're very, very happy to have this session. Thanks to our writers, our poets who are present here today. I want to thank also João Manuel Dias from the live stream service Televisão Portuguesa de Califórnia for broadcasting this live stream on his television service. We appreciate it very, very much. And I want to also thank, of course, all of the various groups on Facebook who are always willing to share and for us to reach a wider audience. Our session is being, of course, recorded, and it will be archived not just through the Fresno State PBBI YouTube channel, but also through our Henry Madden Library. We're actually, this week, we're setting up our page, part of the Portuguese Oral History collection. And so all of the different panels from the Luso-American Education Foundation will be archived as oral history at California State University, Fresno. And so thanks to all of you, thanks to all the poets and writers who are here today. As I mentioned, we are going, before we begin the program, we'll be just taking about 8 to 10 minutes for each one of the writers and the poets to basically give a brief intro and to read from their work, whatever they would like to read. It's a kind of at their discretion. We're very excited to see all of you here. We have presentation from coast to coast, from Paula in the East Coast and the Scots to those of us here in the other left coast of the United States of America. And so we, of course, want to thank all of those who are following us in the webinar, and especially we have a lot of folks following us and always with nice comments, and I'll try to follow them through the various social media platforms. Thank you all again. It is a pleasure to have the Luso-American Education Foundation Conference for the second year in a row virtual, but I don't think you'll ever go back to what it was, although it a lot nicer to have all of you in Fresno, at Fresno State, and to be there live. It might be impossible to have this number, but we hope to actually, that is one of our projects at BBBI, is to put forth in the next couple of years a writers' conference. We'd love to bring Portuguese Americans from all walks of life and from different parts of the United States that could get together. Be much better if we could do it in the Azores, which is a bit more expensive, or in mainland Portugal. But we might be able to swing it somewhere into Fresno through BBBI in Fresno State. So we're going to start, and it's not in any particular order. I just looked right here, and so I'm going to order the way I have it on my screen. So we're going to start with Sam Pereira, and again, I'm not going to do any introductions because if I'll have you take a few minutes to introduce yourselves and of course, read from your work, because I that's what we're all here for, obviously. So, Sam, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dinesh. Okay, very briefly, I am a graduate of Fresno State. And usually, everybody here knows that early on, and you just whatever. The thing I want to mention is that I did a lot of looking around to see what poems to read, and trying to come up with something that was that you couldn't miss the Portuguese angle on. Probably the wrong word, but you understand what I mean. And I realized that even though there's a hint of that in these, in one in particular, these are poems that I think work either way, whether it would be to a Portuguese audience, listening in English, of course, for me, or an American audience. And I want to begin with a fairly new one called Ancestry. It's really new. And it deals with kind of the ins and outs and ways of looking at that particular aspect of being Portuguese American. Probably with some blasphemous things in there somewhere. I can't help it. Ancestry. Keep it simple, they told me. The planet is dirt, after all, and the most one can hope for is mud with the morning wind. They insisted on me remembering the rosaries in the evenings after dinner, when all anyone's another aperitif served by the Lord with his disciples close at hand, with cheesecake and a lemon for our sins. It was a religion no one spoke of, unless they were out to sea, true adventurers bobbing for cod under the authority of ancestors. Keep it within the bounds of good taste and afternoon tea, they said. And when I refused, they smiled and went on their way. Thank you. Now, this is the one that's a little bit longer, and it has to do with a male trying to impress a female, but not in the ways that one might normally think. This guy is making her dinner, and he's going to make the dinner is going to be bacalhau. And it's pretty, you know, I mean, it could go in a cookbook too, I suppose. It's called The Precision of the Marriage Fish. In trying to impress the woman who, up until that point, wanted, he decided dinner was going to be bacalhau. It was going to take days, the rudiments of knowing the proper temperature for slicing a tomato, mincing the garlic, and holding his fingers to his nose to savor this. It would be intriguing to her sensibilities and would never be enough. So he continued to go on about the Greeks being masters when it came to olives. He sprinkled the Kalamata jewels as though paving a highway leading directly to her heart. He transformed a large green pepper into strips and held two of them next to her ears, whispering they matched her spectacular emerald eyes. Potato slices were the size of quarters, and he placed them into the mix. He continued with the fish. 3 days he'd spent soaking and draining and placing it back into fresh water. This repeated and repeated as the salt became a breeze rising through windows and back to a spiritually dangerous sea. The slices of egg placed ceremoniously around the edges reminded him how much the struggle had always been about imposing itself as a colorful casserole of fish on a plate of red and green vegetables, lavished with eggs and steeped in the miraculous juices of memory. Thank you. Hungry? Finally, I want to close with a poem that kind of deals with a man who's looking for answers, as so much poetry does. Sometimes it even finds answers. This is a guy who maybe finds his answer right where he is. It's called A Cozy Little Scene at Home. I was looking for something to watch during the war, something that would occupy me and the dog while she was away. The news seemed a waste of time. Nothing there but the fumes of politics, too long on the shelf. I spotted what appeared to be a love story. A guy with a master's in psychology, a woman with a desire to serve him pancakes in bed. Between the two of them, a magic unseen since 1956 in a bankrupt town on the plains. The only other possibility left was to watch the war itself. The tanks have pulled up. They've occupied the driveway, and the dog is on his pillow. The man is pouring dark tea. The biscuits are on the white porcelain. She is slowly removing her shoes. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. All three of them. Indeed, very well done as always. Thank you for all the imagery. Thank you for all the all the questions and some answers once in a while. And thanks for making us hungry as well with bacalhau. But it's very well done. And so we'll go to the East Coast and we'll welcome Paulo Neves, who we're very excited to have here for the first time. And welcome Paulo, who has been, of course, same thing. If you'll take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself to the audience, if you don't mind, and then read your choice, of course. Welcome again. We're on mute, Paula.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I do that every time with class. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Denise, for inviting me. I'm actually in upstate New York right now, so I'm getting a little bit of a taste of fall, so hence this. So a little bit of background on me. I have been a poet for many, many moons, and recently branched out into visual art and filmmaking, and I've found some success in that. I'm a graduate of the MFA program in poetry at Rutgers Newark. I teach at Rutgers Newark. I teach English composition. Leaves my mind free to do the creative stuff. Yeah, I have a chapbook out. I'm working on my full length. It's been a long gestation, but sometimes those things are. So I'm going to read. I was debating whether to read overtly Portuguese themed poems tonight, but I'm like, what the heck, So the first one definitely is. The second one kind of comes at it from a different perspective, and the third one also comes at it from a more indirect approach. So I'm going to read three just like Sam did, and it's wonderful actually to hear Sam kind of in person, right? Because I've been reading his poetry for a long time. So this first one I'm going to read, let me just bring it up, is called Oranges at the Festival of the Village Saint. And this poem was really, it was based on an abstraction of a memory I had of being a kid going with my parents to Portugal, and we always would go in the summer, and there'd always be the summer festival for the village saint. This kind of comes at that, but it's got an epigraph from Carlo Matos, another poet who we all know from this community. So it's talking about this, but it was inspired by his approach to poetry, which is a little bit more abstract than mine. So it's called Oranges at the Festival of the Village Saint, or Return. The epigraph by Carlo is, "It's a child's color, or should be, tasting like early summer before it fades to the broom sweep coat of the dog days. Augusts of our origins, we put on best shorts and smiles, rented Mercedes Benzes or BMWs that crushed olive and eucalyptus down the paths where someone inevitably picked winter oranges left for pith, strung up tissue banners with the locals, watched the paper flutter from 3 light poles that took 2 prime ministers to raise, waited for the oncoming band marching from the chapel, a Lleida-making ancestors long forgotten, to play a dirge the remaining recognized as praise for knowing their own place. The parade always stopped us retornados in our tracks. "This is lively," said our mother. "Who died?" asked our son. "Ostia," shouted the host of hosts from a grand new terracotta casa. "You sure that house is big enough?" The neighbor viuva, who long ago stopped being someone's daughter, cracked while peeling pith for orange garnishes on roast suckling pig's lips. "It's not like Jesus, Mary, and Joseph ever drove a Plymouth." So, I mean, obviously there's a reference to Lleida, and so I've always kind of been fascinated by a possible Jewish ancestry. So this poem kind of nods towards that, and actually this next one does too, but it comes at it from a different perspective. It comes at it from the perspective of possibly Portuguese, the Portuguese make a cameo here as, possibly the Portuguese who, went from Spain to Portugal to Holland. This is actually an ekphrastic, sort of, after Bruegel, the Elders, the Harvesters, that painting, and it's called The Simple Life. Jongelink might have had you believe, over candlelit dinner at his country compound, pheasant with Portuguese pepper perhaps, sugared plums, that the harvesters coming home from the fields love the evening road's dust, their houses' plain girth, because August reminded them what they were made of, as if merchants were struck from different cloth, as if there were no more Muranos in Antwerp, dreaming of New Amsterdam dark. At the hearth, hands calloused over bread and stewed rabbit on Sabbath, we suspend our disbeliefs. We walk warmly at dawn to the fields because roads, in all their portended Romanness, carry us. We give ourselves over to whatever's left. And the fields, half gathered, remember history better than most. And the fallen roads and the fallen roofs know, when winter rains, which walls the wild currents will overtake in the spring. And this last one, let me just bring it up because I'm actually looking at my manuscript, so I have to find the poem here. So just bear with me. Okay. So this one is now set in America, sort of, and it's called A Portuguese on Retreat in Red America. And I was kind of inspired by this when I was on a writing retreat back in 2015, and also I was inspired by all the division in this country. There's a long epigraph for this, but it's an interesting epigraph, I find. So the epigraph is: we saw that the birds are really aggressive to songs by their next door neighbors. But once there's enough distance between them, they don't understand the songs anymore. It's like if you speak Portuguese in Portugal, you can probably understand Spanish, and you might understand French, but if you keep going further and further away, eventually you'll hit languages that are unfamiliar that you can't parse. That was from Kaya Provost at the American Museum of Natural History, Smithsonian Magazine, in December 2018. And again, this is called A Portuguese on Retreat in Red America. I am writing at a field desk from a war, U.S. Army, Korea, or Vietnam, worth more if it was civil, the innkeeper stepping out says. It's vintage from eBay or handed down from someone before her who cared for such. She can't remember. I shrug. The spring-loaded door behind her slams. I jump as if it was a gunshot, of course. It's June on a farm, porch swing evening. I sit at a desk from a war, fought on the front lawn of every city where I am from, when a cardinal appears with a whistle and shrill, appears too red, a loud red, to compensate for such a small crest? No, that's not always the way it works. Or maybe a menstrual red that soaks through the quiet on the fence. It's useless to write this. Red of waiting for carnation days, for the mother I wished for, still write to on my posts, the mother who pretended my father died in Angola, fighting against independence. Oh, the romance. And something else. Blood she's had enough of, too many white cells fighting the rest, consuming the flesh, the incarnation, incarnação, unholy alliance of body and history. Fine. Okay, believe that's not how it works. But shamans and the dead say, when Cardinal appears, pay attention to circulation, what comes around. Thank you.
Fantastic. Wow. Love it. Wonderful. Wonderful. Love the red waiting for the carnation days. Lots of imagery there. Thank you, Paula. Fantastic. Great job. And so we'll come back to this coast. And Melissa, if you don't mind.
Yes. Thank you. I am so honored to be here and to be amongst such wonderful writers. My name is Melissa Jessen Heiser. I'm a recent graduate of Fresno State's MFA program in creative nonfiction in 2020. And I also work at Fresno State. I've been an educator there for 13 years, working in our Center for Community Engagement and Service Learning, and excited to start some new projects with Denise in my office coming up here. So my thesis was a collection of essays that was really an exploration of the things that we inherit and the things that we pass on. And so not just genetic code, but also traditions and belief and trauma. And the essay I'm reading from today, I'm taking some excerpts from, is looking at my Portuguese heritage from my mother's side of the family. So just a couple of things that kind of got cut out for time, but might be relevant. My mom is sort of our unofficial keeper of the records, and has been doing our genealogy for a long time. And I'm quite envious of her because she has all of these firsthand accounts, and she has bore witness to the stories that I've only been told in, second and third hand, and what has become lore in a lot of ways. And so in this essay, I kind of explore that lore and try to even reimagine what I think may or may not have happened. Incidentally, this year is 100 years since my great-grandfather immigrated here from San Miguel. And so that feels kind of meaningful for some reason. And then in this essay, I also mentioned the miracles of Queen Saint Isabel and how Festus pay homage to her, but that's been cut out. I think this audience knows that story anyway. So this is called Pray for Our Sinners. It's pray for us sinners, my mom said from the front seat of the car. Us, not our. Right, I said, and then repeated the corrected line. Pray for us sinners now at the hour of our death. My mom sighed, now and at the hour of our death. Again, I parroted her correction from the back seat, now and at the hour of our death. I turned my attention to the landscape. The suburbs had given way to expansive farmland 20 minutes earlier, our car moving swiftly down rural avenues, passing orchards, vineyards, dairies, all baking under the summer sun. Under my breath, I continued to recite the Hail Mary prayer and absently toyed with the borrowed rosary beads my mom had given me. I could hear my sister Trish mumbling the prayer as well from the front seat. A large crown marked by swirls and filigrees of studded fake diamonds rested in her lap. It was one of the biggest crowns I'd seen a Festa queen wear before. My own crown, much smaller and filled with half crescents of crystals that climbed upon each other, fanning upward, was already on my head, the built-in combs pressing deeply into my scalp. I would serve as one of 2 attendants to Trish for the next year, marching alongside my sister in traditional Portuguese parades up and down the Central Valley and Central Coast of California. Organized and hosted by fraternal organizations, festas serve as gathering points for the state's Portuguese immigrant community. The events feature numerous customs like parades, cultural dancing, traditional food, and bullfights, and always a Catholic Mass. Catholicism is so intertwined with festas that most organizations require their queens and attendants to be Catholic, which brings us back to the car ride and our anxious memorization of the rosary prayers, because we were not Catholics, we were Lutherans. Manuel immigrated to the United States in 1921. He left San Miguel, headed west to America. I like to imagine him boarding a steamship, his ticket most likely for steerage class in the bowels of the boat, because certainly a poor man like him would not be able to afford a first-class ticket. Maybe he took one last deep breath of the Atlantic air and one last sweeping glance at the island, holding it like a photograph, an emblazoned memory before ducking below deck. I wonder if he thought of his father, the elusive Francisco, who had also boarded a ship once, never to return, leaving behind his wife and 4 children, Brazil bound in search of his own fortune, a fortune that one presumes he never found, a fortune that others speculate he tried to make on the backs of slaves. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners. Did Manuel's mother wave to him from shore? Was she too sad and broken at the idea of watching another man board a boat and never return? Or maybe Manuel didn't want her to come. It will be too hard, Mama, if you come. I won't be able to leave you. They would have prayed together before he left. She would have made the sign of the cross over him, maybe pressed some small memento into his hand, a gift to remember her, to remember his faith, maybe rosary beads. But the streets of America are lined with gold, he'd heard, and who wouldn't want to see that, to touch it? Perhaps when he boarded the boat, his stomach churned, a reaction to the overabundance of adrenaline and fear and sadness and excitement coursing through his veins. Perhaps it stormed on the way over, and the boat wobbled and weaved its way across the Atlantic towards a foreign shore. And next to others, amid the smell of vomit and salty air, maybe Manuel clutched his rosary and uttered his prayers over and over, thinking about his mother who he left behind, thinking ahead to the streets paved with gold. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And the ship thrashed and bounced along the wide ocean. Maybe in his prayers Mary came to him. She is known to do that, popping up all over the world, performing miracles, making her presence known. She appears to believers and counts them as blessed. Maybe she came to Manuel and promised him a good life in exchange for his faith. Maybe she told him that he'd land safely in New Orleans, that he'd make a long voyage across the country to the small farming town of Tulare, California, that there he'd meet with distant cousins who would show him the ways of the New World. Did she show him Angeline, his young bride, 11 years his junior, or the 5 daughters he would have, and the 11 grandchildren, and the 20 great-grandchildren? Did she tell him how his seed would spread across the San Joaquin Valley and beyond to propagate a new land with his island blood? Did this comfort him? Would he know that one day one of those great-grandchildren would spend her time writing about the world, speculating about his past, wishing she would have known to ask these questions when she still had the chance? 10 years after he landed in America in 1931, Manuel's first daughter was born. He named her Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Mary married George in the 1950s. They'd only been on a few dates and spent hardly any time alone, but he had this great smile that seemed benign and affable and maybe even a little goofy next to large ears that protruded from his head. Like Mary, George was born to Aizerian immigrants and grew up in the Portuguese dairy community in Central California. But George was not benign or affable or goofy. In fact, he was mean and abusive. He beat Mary. He beat their children. Blessed art thou amongst women. In her brokenness, Mary went to the Catholic Church for help. Leave him, her priest advised. Leave him or he'll kill you and the kids. And blessed is the fruit of thy womb. They divorced in 1966, their paper citing extreme cruelty as the cause of the dissolution. After the divorce, Mary was denied communion because she broke the holy sacrament of marriage. Which brings us once again back to the car, and my mother teaching my sisters and me to recite the rosary. I won't have you denied your cultural heritage just because you're not Catholic, she told us. My sisters and me, 4th-generation Americans, further and further removed from Manuel and his migration, Our last name, Jessen, the representation of the Danish invasion from our father into the 100% Aizerian bloodline passed through Mary and George to my mom, maintained in this country through 3 previous generations. Our looks, undeniably Portuguese. Brown hair, brown eyes, olive skin. One look at us, one look at me, and it's overwhelmingly clear that I am my mother's daughter. My mom wanted so much for us to know our heritage that she taught us to be pretenders, to pretend to believe in a faith she gave up on a long time ago, a faith she lost when her mother, Mary, performed a miracle of her own and left George and saved her children. When my grandmother died a few years ago, my family descended on her home and split up her belongings, each person claiming a memento, a treasure of their own. Of the many things I took, I reclaimed a souvenir I'd brought her from a trip to France in the summer of 2000 while studying abroad. I'd visited the holy town of Lourdes, a site where the Virgin Mary is said to have visited. I was taken aback by the commercialism of the town, every window hawking holy water, every street vendor promising salvation, and yet I bought a modest rosary, its beads a marbled brown. It came with a small silver box on which I had engraved the name Mary. Sometimes I take the beads from their box and hold them in my hand, my fingers gingerly moving from bead to bead. I imagine my grandmother's soft fingers tenderly gripping each round stone, reciting her prayers, praying for her family, praying for salvation, praying for me. Thank you.
Well, now that you brought, it's not easy to bring tears to my eyes, but you were able to do that. Thank you. That's great. I need to read the entire thing now, the entire essay, and you need to publish that, of course. So thank you so much, Melissa. Very powerful. And we will stay at Fresno State and go from Melissa to Melinda. So Melinda Medeiros, Rose, and Melinda, if you'll do the same, if you don't mind taking a few minutes to kind of talk a little, introduce yourself, and then your chosen reading, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Denise. And thank you to PBBI and also you for hosting this event and for inviting me to participate. It's an honor to be here among such talented, wonderful authors. So my name is Melinda Medeiros, as Denise introduced me. I am in my 3rd year at the MFA program, the Masters in Fine Arts at Fresno State. I write mostly creative nonfiction, and some of my work has been published in various publications. So I'm currently working on my thesis. So it's a manuscript, probably a collection of essays, and it explores growing up here in the Central Valley. I grew up on a turkey farm. I am the daughter of Azorean immigrants, and grew up devout Catholic. And so I explore those identities and others that we both inherit and adopt. So tonight I am reading from an essay I wrote about 3 years ago. It's the same year that my grandfather died. And it was one of my essays that I used to get into the program, and I haven't touched it since. And so I'm in the process right now of going through all of these essays, and I really want to take this one out and work with it some more. So it's called The Things We Lose. You catch your reflection in the closet door mirror. Your eyes dilate onto the emptiness of your left earlobe. The first time you wear earrings in months, you lose one. But this isn't just any piece of decorative jewelry. These were the earrings you bought yourself nearly 11 years ago in Ponta Delgada, on the island of San Miguel. You were on a trip with your mother and her childhood friend, Janet. Janet was an English professor at the University of Kentucky. She was also the first person who ever spoke an idea out loud that had been hiding in the dusty corners of your mind for much of your life. You should pursue writing. When a published author and a writing teacher says these words, you acknowledge them. You coax that idea out into the sunshine and have a good look at it. That was the trip where you learned of your mother's humanness, when you met the person behind the matronly role model she always tried to portray. Turns out she's as twisted as the rest of us. It didn't sit well with you at the time. The decade that has now settled comfortably between then and now, along with the transition into your own experience of motherhood, has helped dilute the judgment you had then felt. Finding out your mother has identities unrelated to you is difficult to digest. More so when the ideal image at the surface was based off of religious ideologies, this need for feminine perfection that had created a chasm between you and her, one that you're still not sure how to bridge. But you have 3 kids of your own now. Kids that challenge every identity you thought you owned before them, when you were just you, not mom, not wife. Now you realize that regardless of intention or effort, you will concoct your own ways to screw up this whole parenting thing. And one day your children might also resent all the ways you could have done better. Staring at the remaining earring, you remember the moment when you first saw the pair in a little shop window on a narrow cobblestone street. You had never before seen lava rocks turned into jewelry, never appreciated how the porous black roughness made everything around it smoother and brighter. You had stepped into the shop, the tinkling welcome bell helping to dull a long-standing aversion to anything that could be considered a souvenir. You like to collect experiences, not trinkets. But these earrings called to you, dared you to consider them a bit of both. Plus, for only 30 euros, you could carry a piece of your grandfather's island back with you halfway across the world to the place that had become your family's home for the past 50 years. A one-of-a-kind piece of artwork, the shopkeeper had said in an accented English so familiar to your ears. When your grandfather passed away this year, the earrings never even crossed your mind. They sat in the jewelry box along with the others, bracelets, rings, and necklaces that rarely adorn your stay-at-home mom life. Each time you wore those earrings, you remembered not only the trip with your mother, but the very first trip to the island when you were 16 and your grandfather still had a summer home there. The grandfather that you had always viewed from afar walked right next to you during those 6 weeks, showed you the park he played in as a boy, the church he and your grandmother were married in, the cemetery where he buried both his parents and his firstborn son. You had taken a picture of the graves that no longer had any of their simple wooden markers, only orange marigolds spilling over the stone number that let everyone know whose loved ones lay beneath. Even at 16, you could see how he carried the weight of all those he had lost tightly around him, creating that distance you had always felt. You couldn't conceive then how you might one day carry some heaviness of your own. And now that living, breathing connection to the Atlantic island, felt in the weight of an earring, is gone. Buried in a granite box in a cemetery on this side of the world. These days, you like to consider yourself a minimalist in training. The old aversion to collecting trinkets still reprimands all the stuff life has left you with. Piece by piece, you try to give away anything that no longer serves you, any item that sits around your house collecting dust, clutters a mind that has become overrun with decades of memories. Many things have become too heavy to carry with you. Memories are enough. But these earrings you did not give away. You placed the surviving earrings securely in your carved wooden jewelry box. You searched the bedroom rug, the hallway, the living room. You retrace your steps through the garage and comb the floors and corners of your car. You sit in the driver's seat and think back over the morning. Did you lose it at the doctor's office, as the pediatrician recommended optometrists for your 7-year-old? Your daughter had been tracing the earring with her little finger, but you never sensed it drop. You had reached up and felt it there when you gently guided her hand away. Maybe you lost it at the coffee shop while trying to balance coffee, the kids' snacks, and a toddler tired of sitting still all morning. Or was it in the parking lot of your son's school when you hugged him goodbye, reassured him that glasses are the coolest, and watched him walk back to class? Was it at the department store while buying overpriced perfume and trying to convince yourself that it was worth it? You would like to think that the earring will turn up somewhere. Maybe one day when you're vacuuming out the car, you'll hear the clatter of metal in the bin and dump all of its dusty insides out onto the garage floor. You'll sift through the debris until your dirty fingers feel the edge of a metallic frame. Or maybe your foot will be greeted with its sharp corner one morning in the dark moments before dawn. You'll mutter curses while you reach down to search for the culprit, irritation melting into joy when your hands find recognition in the shape. You still have your memories. You still have the connection to that island running through your veins. You even consider that maybe one day you will find your way back to that little shop on that narrow cobblestone street. You'd like to think that even if you never find that shop or the earring, it will be okay. You know that it will be okay. But even the most logical and reassuring of these thoughts fail to stop the tears from quietly sliding down past your empty earlobes. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful piece. Very well, indeed. Memories and memories. And so from Melinda, we'll go back to the East Coast for Scott, who has just, I don't know if Scott is in New York or if he's in Providence. He's all over the world reading. So tell me where you're at today, Scott.
Right now, yeah, thank you, Dinesh. I'm in Providence. Should acknowledge that this is the traditional tribal lands of the Narragansett. I'm just a few miles from the building in which I was born, which used to be called Lying In Hospital, which I always thought was a strange name for a hospital, Lying In, but it's now a rehabilitation facility. And I've been at Providence College guest teaching, a wonderful visiting assistant professor, Ryan Shea, who invited me to come speak with his environmental philosophy class. They've been reading my book, Dwelling, an Ecopoem, which I thought I might read from tonight, but I realized I've been spending all week with that book, and I was looking forward to getting back to the Azores this evening. So I'm hoping to physically get back to the Azores in December, knock on wood, if the COVID variants will allow. So I thought I would read first from a section from Azorian Suite, which is a book that was published in Ponta Delgada last year. And then I wanted to read the title poem from my new collection that's coming out later this year, and I'll say a little bit about that when I come to it. So I'll start. This is from a late section in Azorian Suite, which is divided into 4 sections like a suite would be. So I'll just start. Conjugating the geography of memory. I stare at a photo of paving stones taken in Fajan de Bajo, where 2 of my 3rd great-grandmothers, Francisca Candida and Ana de Jesus Correa, were born. White limestone inlay and black basalt formed into the shape of a pineapple, still nestled in the leaves of its parent plant. Basalt accents detail the remnants of many flowers whose fruitlets have gathered around a core. Now prickly upcurved spines. In 1493, Columbus found pineapples on Guadeloupe Island in the Caribbean, although they are also native to Brazil. Portuguese traders took the seeds to India from the Moluccas in 1548 and introduced the fruit to coastal Africa. In 1874, growers in the Azores accidentally discovered smoke brings pineapple plants into bloom in 6 weeks, ethylene accelerating growth. The Saint Michael, a variety of smooth cayenne, cultivated now just outside Fajada de Baixo, in a greenhouse, mostly for export to mainland Portugal and Madeira, is considered of luxury quality and a favorite of visiting tourists. A symbol of home, the pineapple signifies hospitality and warmth and friendliness. That seems a fitting symbol for this island I am longing for. I heard a funny story about my great-grandfather. My great-grandparents, two of my maternal great-grandparents emigrated from the Azores in 1906, settling in Fox Point, Providence, not far from where I'm sitting right now. And I heard a funny story. I never thought that they, after that, their initial trip in immigration, she came at the age of 14 with her entire family, and he came at the age of 19 on his own. I never thought that they went back. Well, I said that in a talk I gave, in which I was reading from a memoir I'm writing about my great grandparents and their experience. And a cousin of mine, he's the first cousin once removed, so he's my mother's first cousin. He corrected me and said, he reached out to me and he said, "Oh, by the way, he did go back. He went back after his wife died, my great grandmother, and apparently there were a lot of stories about his trip there. But one of them was that he came with a big camel hair coat and suitcases full of stuff, and he gave all of this stuff away, everything, including the coat. And all he came back from this trip to the Azores was, like, I think it was 1962. He came back with 2 pineapples." Which I don't know if he got them, at the airport in Santa Maria or where he got them, but he came back with 2 pineapples. That's all he had. So that was the story that he told me. I thought, well, this is like, I've got to write about this. I'm going to have to do a whole nother book. So let me turn to this new. It's a new poem actually, and it's going to be. It's going to appear. It's the title poem for my new collection, which is coming out later this year. It's going to be in a journal or a book, I guess, called American Studies Overseas, which Margarita Valdegato is editing, and it's called Wine Dark Sea. And I'm going to skip around from it. It's a rather long poem, so I'm going to read just little sections of it. Some of which will also relate to the stories that I just told, and that I just told about my great grandparents. So this is Wine Dark Sea. To the retired classicist watching a vivid sunset at the mouth of Maine's Daramascata River, the color of sea resembles Maphrodaphne, a wine of deep purple-brown hue, made from a black grape indigenous to the northern Peloponnesus. The upper reaches of sky, filled with ash from the eruption of Mount St. Helens, over 3,000 miles away, cast a deep red on the outgoing tide, river of many fishes. Perhaps Homer's Wine Dark Sea is ashy red, ashy sunset red. The phrase wine dark established foothold through Liddell and Scott's Greek-English lexicon of 1843. Liddell's Daughter, of course, inspired Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, 1865. "Don't drink me," the wine dark sea might say to her, however much she may be tempted. Oinops pontus, from oinus plus ops. Oinus meaning wine, ops meaning face, and pontus meaning sea. So literally, wine face sea. But what is wine face? Ruddy, flushed, a little bleary-eyed after having consumed an entire bottle or 2 in the gregarious night? Surely, though, ops can mean eye as well as face. So is it the reddish wine-colored eyes, whites of the eyes, of a night of serious drinking, or the dark bluish circles of next morning's hangover. Some theorize the ancient Greeks could not see the color blue, their optical palette limited to black and white, and possibly red. Their experience of color may have consisted, rather, of equal parts movement and shimmer. Porphyreus, that glimmer effect on sea surface when light refracts or reflects at different hours and in different weathers. Wine's tint recalling the luster of liquid inside the terracotta cups used to drink it. Beyond the sea, Homer uses the epithet to describe an ox, ancestor to Bunyan's Babe the Blue Ox. The adjective appears a dozen times across the Iliad and Odyssey, and further, it's used to describe the eyes of Dionysus, god of winemaking, and the Bacchae of Euripides. Were his eyes blue or made blue by drinking too much wine? Still another theory has it the ancient Greeks mixed their wine with the alkaline freshwaters of the Peloponnesus, which would have turned their red wine to blue, alkalinity converting anthocyanins through chemistry, as with a drop of wine on a white napkin, tablecloth, or bedsheet. History, from the Greek historia meaning to learn from inquiry, and knowledge acquired by investigation, leading me to historia, story in Portuguese, which language also renders the wine dark sea thus, o mar cor de vinho, where cor is color, although it resembles the English word core, the central or most important part of something, the earth's core, say, or the core of an issue, the central part of a fruit, as in Merriam-Webster's definition, quote, especially the papery or leathery carpels composing the ripened ovary in a palm fruit, such as an apple. But here, the core of the story, the central part of the historia, at least, or what I've learned from inquiry, is that the ocean crossing of my great-grandparents heading from the Azores to America is at the core of my own history, my own story, that their individual crossings bore fruit in the form not only of my later life, but of a sort of trauma of separation. They both must have felt, leaving their island, and which may have been passed down to me through RNA, rendering the wine dark sea, if not the color of wine, perhaps the core of my own sensibility. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was a new poem. Well, very well done. And of course, it's from excerpts. I'm waiting for the entire poem. It would be wonderful. Thank you, and congratulations on a new book as well. And congratulations on this teaching experience at in Providence. Hope you get to see Onesimo. Yeah. Okay. Good. So we're going to come back to California, and we have our poet laureates. There aren't too many of them in the Portuguese American community, and we're very proud of Laura and her work, and especially since she's become poet laureate for El Dorado County, and has a book coming up, so she's going to talk about that. Laura, welcome. And you do have, again, the Azores in the background. That is not El Dorado County, okay, folks? That's not El Dorado County. I just tell you that because there's been some fires everywhere in California, and there's, I don't think, a place in California that looks like that. You're on mute, Vlad, if you could change that for us.
Sorry, a good thing I was on mute. I have to say to Scott about the wine in the eyes, that was great. I have almost black eyes, and I drink a lot of wine. So, are they going to turn blue? Anyway, that's, we have a lot of vineyards where I live. I'm a poet laureate for El Dorado County, and if I'm not creating, planning, I'm hosting. It's like, it's a good title to have, because with a title, you can do things. People think you're important. So I've been having a lot of fun doing all these projects, and I think I started to do too many because I'm not getting much sleep, but I have to get some tips from Dinesh how he does it. But I'm having a lot of fun. And they call me because I'm bringing poetry into the community. So it's not just poetry readings, just as a poetry reading is bringing it to, we're having an Indigenous Farm Day tomorrow with Native American poets, and I'm bringing a lot into our community. They call me an activist, and I correct them and I say, no, I'm not an activist, I'm an active poet. So they have to get that right. And other than that, so far it's very tiring, but a lot of fun. But I wanted to just say a couple of things for others who don't know me. My family's been here since the gold rush. I live 7 miles from where gold was discovered in California. And the northern part of the state is where my mother's side of the family is from. And the landscape of the mountains is very important to me and my family. And we'll get into more on that later. But my Azorian family, which they all Azorians from the Azores, all my family, came here as adventurers and looking for gold, but never found it, and became cattle ranchers and ranchers in general. So I'm about a 5th, 6th generation. And you could call me a California girl, and I'm so happy about Fresno State and Dinesh doing all these things and so forth. I'm just so happy about that for California, and we're getting a group together of writers and poets, because I never even met a Portuguese writer and poet till I was much older, probably much older. I can't, my memory's going. Anyway, I'm going to read 3 poems, and one is the Azores, about the Azores for me. And this is from my book, Kissing the Bee. It's called The Pole of Water. Convulsion of island flesh. Sorrow of ash settles into cloud, the crumble at the edge of all they knew. Tumbling into the sea, they struggled to keep afloat their exhausted breath, the letting go. The sea swells, bursts open. Currents, gravity, wind call their fate. The surface keeps breaking. The sky keeps moving. They drift further away from home, breathe the ocean in unison. She dreams between black rocks, listens to water tell stories of her ancestors. In her mind, she reaches out her hand to meet them in a new world as they climb out of the ocean. Give her sleep. Let her find herself restored, reunited with who she is, where she came from. Before morning, she'll swim back to earth, her body growing heavy. The sunrise, like giant wings, flies upward. A voice and a hand on her shoulder. My next poem concerns, well, as you know, if you read the newspaper and watch the news, we have fires here in California, especially the northern part this summer. I have suitcases packed at the door, and we were one of those that might have been evacuated. I had we had friends stay here. We've had just a lot of sadness concerning loss of homes. And for a while there, my favorite lake was in danger, Lake Tahoe. And I just had a friend come to check her cabin, which was still there, and she was very happy. And the fire situation isn't going to get any better. It's got to do with climate change. How do you deal with it? We live here in the mountains with the trees, beautiful landscape. This poem is about where my parents came from, the campfire. Their home was destroyed through the campfire. The home that we had lived in was destroyed. We had friends living with us who were evacuees, and it's been ongoing. So this relates to my family in California and how it is. And when I went back to see my parents' home that was no longer there. And the poem is called These Stones. After the campfire, Paradise Pines, California. I follow behind a backhoe, see the burnt scarring, a desolate landscape of ash heaps, vanished lives. In a vacant lot of cinder, I remember my mother's camellia tree, how she liked Gerber daisies, my grandmother's tea rose. Granite binds me to this property. The stones my uncle gave to my father to stabilize the embankment. I choose to believe something still breathes here. When I call out, I hear a heartbeat. Fierce rocks pull away from the ground, and I remember who I am. These stones on the hillside cover a stubborn root, a long vein, blood of my blood, alive deep inside. In the passage of my remaining days, I'm here to survive myself, grow wings to fly through smoke. Now, from that stone embankment, I took one of those stones, because then I relate to Melinda's piece of writing about memory. And oh my God, my memory, from all the ones that are gone, and it's just evident in the landscape. I even get tears right now. But I actually had an experience that you related about the earring. It wasn't an earring. It was probably a rock. But it doesn't make any difference, the memories. And the memory is not just in the Azores, it's in California here for me and my family. So, go on to the next poem I have. This is the title poem from my new book. And it's very different than my other book. Let me get some water here. In this book, it's called Fourth World Woman. I identify with the natural world, which I usually do anyway, where plant, wildlife, and human emerge into a single voice. Shape shifting is not unusual. I like to travel between dimensions and species as my ancestors drift in and out. And this is the poem that is the title poem for the book. It's called Fourth World Woman. A fugitive of the modern world, she's tired of deep life. Excuse me, I talk too much. Even before. Let me get some water. A fugitive of the modern world, she's tired of deep lies and anthems, the marble limbs of statues on the ground. When smoky skies erase mountains and eagles, shroud angry riots in town, she craves the peace of forest creatures. Imagining a fourth world, the rustle of wild grass beguiles her. The animal inside teaches her to have visions, to watch for signs. Night moves through her, breathes and stretches, a cold nose touching her. She snatches the mouse from the cat's mouth, sets it free. Antlers shadow the sky, and she hurts a beautiful pain. She molts her former selves for a furred face, nostrils slanting. At the crest, she stands doe-like, hooves in place, awaits the deluge to cleanse the ailing earth. Thank you.
Wonderful as always. A lot of wonderful. And your new book, when is it coming out? I know that's soon.
It's actually there's pre-sales happening right now. I can certainly share that with you after the conference.
Yes.
Pre-sales and then it's sent to you on the 28th of January. So it's a ways, but it's together and we're ready for it here.
Sure, and send me the information so I can share it with our network, please. And so congratulations, and I know that also Scott was saying he has, of course, a new book coming as well. Paulo has a book coming as well, right?
Yeah.
And Sam, I'm sure you've got enough for probably 3 books right now, and if you really want to publish it, right? Do you have plans?
No.
All that for no. I mean, really.
That's okay too.
You do have enough. It's just you have to.
Yeah. It's a matter of putting it together.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Well, and of course we need to get and then Melinda's published in different outlets, and so Melissa as well. But I'd love for us to begin work soon on a collection of Portuguese writing, or Portuguese American writing, I should say, through our Bruma publications. I think we have so much that we could publish, and maybe I can talk Melissa and Melinda, since they're Fresno State, to kind of work with me on this, and just as far as a lot of you talked about the Azores, and Letras Lavadas, which is the editor that Scott also publishes with, they're very interested in publishing there, and even the bookstore, and having books from here. So we have to find a way to get some of our publishers in contact with Senor Ernesto there, and to get it published. But because believe it or not, you do know that the Azores, especially the island of San Miguel, are getting a ton of tourists from all over Europe, and so what's the language that connects all of them? English. I mean, so the Europeans, as you all know, read English quite well. Most Europeans of different languages, different nationalities, begin learning English in the 4th or 5th grade. So even if they just do high school by the 12th grade, they've had 8 years of language, so they can communicate. And if they, of course, they go to, as many of them do, to college, they continue with that language. So he, for example, just as all of you know, Tegas Press, or from Dartmouth, from University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, publishes now a collection called the Village Historica Collection, which is a translation, which Scott is working on one right now to translate Vitorino Nemésio, and Letras Lavadas publishes without any grants. It's interesting that Tegas has a grant from the Azorian government, and Ernesto Rezendes in San Miguel published without any grant whatsoever in English. And I asked him why, and this is kind of Scott and I have had this conversation. And when cruise ships stopped there, he said that was one of his biggest markets. People would stop. It's an elder crowd because they do that when they reposition ships. So it's not like the cruise that goes there for sun and whatever. It's just a repositioning twice a year. And so it's an older crowd. They're usually longer journeys of about 14 and 17 days. And it's people who some are retired or have the financial, ability to be or away, for 3 weeks. And he said they stop there, and it's amazing how many of them buy 2-3 books, but they all want something in English. And they don't want just the tourist book, the book with the beautiful pictures of the islands or of Lisbon or whatever. They want, fiction. They want nonfiction. They want poetry. And so he said he has a good way to promote it. And I think that is one of the things that we in the Cagajo Colloquium need to do, which is to get more of your work in the Azores. In translation, of course, that's the ideal, but when not in translation, also in English, because even in the islands, the younger generation, anyone under 40 can read English pretty well in the Azores. Yeah, very, very well. So I don't want to take any more of your time. I think I promised you around an hour and 15 minutes, and it's been around that. So I want to thank all of you for this wonderful experience. Thank you for your readings. Thank you hope you continue to publish. We need to get a little bit better at distribution and at promoting Portuguese literature, Portuguese American, I should say, writing of Portuguese Americans from first generation to fifth generation in our events. And I'm working hard here in California to see if the festas, why not have a literary night? Why not? Maybe the first time there'll only be 3 people, but who cares? It's we need to get that started at a outside of the typical university. Although we've been having some good luck in the aspect that when Sam read for us about a year ago now, Sam, before we had almost 100 people, and that was a really good turnout. But we also need to get involved in and get our writers, all of you, into community venues and have a little bit better connection between the East and West Coast. So thanks to all of you. There's I just went in with Duarte Silva. Those of you here can, of course, look at it on the chat, but those of you that are following us on the other different platforms, thank you, panel members, for the most enriching literary treat. I had a range of emotions running through my heart and mind as each of you read your selections. Again, thank you for a most inspirational and moving session. I think that is the perfect way to end it. So thank you all very much. Thank you. Keep on writing, please. Okay? Bye-bye. Beijinhos. Abraços.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Adeus.